Let's have a look at initiative, the very, very first thing of the game.
Part 1.
Yes. All right, so tell us about initiative a bit.
Initiative. Yeah? So it's a fairly important part of the phase. This determines where you're going to be doing everything, what order you're going to be doing everything in. And it's a straight 2d6 roll.
Yep.
If you're playing some sort of scenario or something, you can mess around with how you do the initiative. You can give different people different bonuses for different things, all that sort of stuff. It's fairly fluid, but the base thing is 2 dice, and the one with the highest number gets initiative.
That's right. So initiative basically allows you to, it gives you some advantages during each turn. So
yes.
in the other phases, so movement and shooting, it gives you advantages there, so it's worth having.
Yep.
Movement, I think, is probably the most important to win it.
Yeah.
Probably one of there are ways, even if you do lose initiative, there are ways that you can still maintain a little bit of advantage. Well, not necessarily advantage.
No, but you can minimise the problems.
Yeah, minimise your issues and things like that. So
you might need to do a bit more strategic movement if you lose your initiative.
Yeah.
When you win the initiative, you can wait for the other guy to finish moving his stuff, and then you can go, yay, and just do it. But when you lose the initiative, you've got to think a bit more about where you're going and what you're doing.
So some of the ways to still maintain an advantage with initiative, we'll have a look at that now. The first one would be how fast your units move.
Yes.
All right. So if you have a lot of fast units in your force, even though you might be sort of forced to move first, you can still sort of get into an advantage area, so you can seek some cover.
Yep.
And like if the enemy units are slower, you can still sort of get in and maybe get into the rear arc if they've already moved, things like that. So
and at the bare minimum, you can say, well, I didn't win initiative, so I'm just going to build up the highest modifier I can and just run flat out somewhere. Like in a straight line, you'll be building up a maximum modifier, and that just makes you harder to hit.
Yeah.
One of the things in the BattleTech games that I've seen is the old cheese where you back up against the edge of the map. With pushing and stuff, that's not always a good move, but sometimes it comes down to that.
Generally under the scenario, if a unit leaves the table edge of the one it's not supposed to leave, then it's out of the game straight away. So you could have a pristine unit that gets pushed off the edge.
Yep.
Done. That's
and
it.
You're in trouble. But sometimes if you lose initiative truly badly and you've got serious problems, that's one of the ways you can kind of tweak things back to your advantage. But
another good one is superiority of numbers, just sheer weight of numbers. Infantry are a good example of that, whether it's powered infantry or standard conventional. If you're forced to move first, then move a unit that can't really move that fast anyway. You
use one that isn't really that big a deal. So if you've got one that's down, just say I'm activating him and he's staying where he is, or something like that. Something that gives you just 1 or 2 more models worth of time to think about the important moves. Always prioritize your moves based, whether you win initiative or not, on whether you think the other guy is going to move this bit or that bit or this bit. So you're trying to get to advantage.
If your opponent has a position of the field that they want to try and hold, and you sort of suspect that they're not really going to move that unit, then you can sort of pick some of your units that sort of move in and get into position. So, and the opposite's also true. Like when you're picking a unit that's a fire support that's going to be at the back of the army, it might not even, you might not even want to move it. It could be like your favorite, the LRM.
Yeah, many a time I've had an LRM carrier or an archer or something at the back of the thing. That's always the first one I activate, standing still. Yeah. Especially if you lose initiative. Yeah.
So it's nice to have elite forces with good piloting and gunnery and things like that, but they are going to cost you BV, which means you can't take as many units.
Yeah.
So, some people have like elite stuff and then fill it out with a few little infantry and smaller units, cheaper units, just to sort of soak up that initiative if you...
Yeah, so you've got something to activate while you're thinking about what to do with the important stuff.
So that's pretty good too.
Yeah, all sorts of different ways you can maneuver it to less of a disadvantage anyway.
So we've sort of focused, a lot of the videos so far, we've focused on ground units. We haven't sort of looked at aerospace and things like that.
Yeah, or orbital or any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so if you start using those in your games, then they can play a pretty big part. in initiative as well.
Yeah.
So,
And in the box set, you don't get infantry, and there's no vehicles or battle armor or any of that sort of stuff. So once you move into the full level BattleTech, it can get really interesting in initiative.
so people that have a couple of these box sets here, which give you 8 mechs, so you know, buy a couple of those, so you start having a combination of like more of light to mediums to use. You can start picking a force using those. So what we talked about. So you've got light units that sort of soak up the initiative.
Yeah,
which is
yeah. So that losing that initiative isn't always as huge a disadvantage as you think it is, but it's better always to win it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So so that's initiative. It is good to win it, but you know it does come down to dice rolls. But at least there's some tips there that you can use to maybe sort of help you a bit, even if you lose.
There's always ways around it. You just got to figure it out.
Yeah. So if you have some other tips for initiative, things like that, leave your comments. We'll talk about it.
Yep.
All right.